Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here in Chennai Storytelling Festival offering another workshop. I resonate with Rohini. Usually and every time, CSF workshops become a journey for ourselves to put together material, all the learning that we gather over the year, and actually co-create it in this platform with the people who come here with with the storytellers and the immense knowledge and rich variety and rich understanding of storytelling that exists in this room lends to my learning also, and that's how CSF has always been. I've been attending CSF from 2013 onwards, and that is the first CSF, and it has always been an opportunity to learn and share, and that's amazing. Thank you. So today we did an inner journey with Rohini. It was indeed going back into that inner child, that space of your inside. My focus is to flip that and look outside at the world around us. And how can that inspire storytelling? So let's just take a look around where we are sitting, at the chair we are sitting. What material is it made of? Is it wood or plastic? Where are we sitting? Which room? Are you sitting in a room that you know, you're familiar with? Or are you sitting in a room which is unfamiliar, like I am doing right now? I have actually moved from my home to another city, and I'm sitting in my sister in law's house in a room that I'm not familiar with. So, where are you sitting? Where are you sitting? Then let's go out of that room, and what is the city? Where is this place situated? Where is the city situated? Where is this land? Like, you zoom out. Let's just zoom out and look at ourselves from the perhaps a space station and look at where we are placed in the cosmos. You can even zoom higher out and go right to another galaxy and look at us ourselves sitting here. And then what does that make you feel? What does that make you feel at this moment? Anybody?
Well, when I zoom out, it makes me feel very small and insignificant.
Yes, yes. Very small, insignificant.
We are just a speck in
We
the
are,
cosmos.
yes, we are a speck in the cosmos. And what else? What about the enormity of that, of the other thing? So on one side, you're seeing the smallness, but there is a polarity over there. There is also the enormity of the things around us. Are you sensing that? How does that make you feel? If you are that speck, you've zoomed out and you look and you see the earth.
A sense of awe and incomprehension.
Yes.
It's I can envision things, but they are not nearly. It's very approximate and very just incomplete because I don't have the imagination to envision what all the magnitude of everything.
Yes, yes, yes. Can't even imagine. It's beyond awesome. It's beyond that feeling of awesomeness. And let's release that breath and just stay with those feelings, whatever you're feeling right now. all the feelings that come to us because of where we are, not who we are, where we are, this land, this space, and feeling. That's the topic of my storytelling, and uh, it's called emotional geography. Emotional geography and storytelling. It came about when I was working with, I was last whole of last year, I was with a group. We were doing, I was enrolled in a course on narrative practices, and side by side doing another course on ecotherapy. So I had this, I was holding the inside and the outside at the same time, and I'm really inspired by that, the sense of connection and how that can lend to storytelling. So let's dive in to what has been my muse for some time now. Come from the land of the Tamils, the Tamil land. I was born, I was brought up here. That is one story. The land lends to my existence in so many ways, to what I do, to the way I think, to how I storify. The land lends to all of this. And I am an integral part of this landscape. All of us belong to some land, and the land lends to us, shapes our identity, shapes our stories in so many small and big ways. But there's one thing that is common for all of us, all of us. The language of emotions is something that we all share. So even if the landscape changes or I belong to a different land, we're all connected by these emotions. For as humans, we experience emotions in very similar ways. And that's how I am connected to you and you are connected to me. So, shall we go about exploring the land around us, exploring how we feel about this land, and exploring what are the emotions that lend or give us the stories of the land and of ourselves, of the land and of our identities. And so we have this interesting idea called Ain Dinai, which comes from the Tamil land. And this Ain Dinai or Ain Tinai, Tinai landscape, and I is a shortened of five. It's a shortened form of five. It's in Old Tamil. Ain Tinai means five landscapes. And my whole workshop is around that, but it is only inspired by that. I am not going to explain this Ain Tinai in a more, in a more literal way. We are going to explore it through our emotions. And that's my workshop for today. Feelings influence our perception of the world. World around us shapes our emotional experiences, and emotional experiences lead to rich story development. So here is a way to inspire people to tell stories, to find stories through how they feel about the world around them. So here we go. There are some sentences on the screen. Read them. Which sentence or which soundscape, which feeling pulls you to you, pulls you? What comes up for you? What story comes up for you? A serene vista of a mountain, the cacophony of a busy market, soothing sounds of waves lapping the shores, the tense atmosphere of a boardroom, fear of walking, of fear of actually walking through a dimly lit path, the sound of an ambulance speeding down the road. Do you have a story for this scape, this landscape? For me, the soothing sound of wave lapping at a beach. I live near the sea. I live in Chennai. I was born and brought up in Chennai. And that is the sound that is home for me, comfort for me. I love to watch the sea. I love the sound of waves lapping at a beach. Recently, when I went to Turkey, of all the places that I saw, I was drawn to the city of Izmir because it is a seaport. And I just stood there and unlike Chennai where there's a beach, in Izmir, I stood at the edge of the water comes right into this. It's like there is just a wall and then the sea starts. I had not seen that. I'd always experienced a beach and then the sea. But I was standing at the edge and watching and seeing the sea. For me, that was like so beautiful. And I was transported. I was moving between my home, Chennai, and Izmir, and just enjoying that sense of movement. And I thought there is a beautiful story here for me. Which of these draws you?
Yeah, Soumya,
Yeah.
I'm actually surprised, but the cacophony of the busy market is what is calling out to me. And I live in Bangalore now, and the minute I thought of, like when I read those words, what came up for me was the busy market in Mumbai. So wherever I went to, whether it was my workplace or college, I would have to take a train and long journey and come back. And everybody would come back to a particular station, like the metro station, and then walk through a certain road and then reach the bus stop and take the bus home. But it used to be that, especially on a rainy day, it used to be really chaotic in Mumbai. But somehow I feel like there is a longing to be in that cacophony right now and it's also sort of bringing up these things of why wherever I go now, I think no matter what I see around the city, I want to see the market and what is being sold there and how are people interacting with each other. And so all of that is sort of coming up for me right now as I imagine that. And it's making me feel um, like less alone as I imagine being there.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. That's a
Mm.
beautiful feeling that the marketplace, you feel you're with people, you're connected,
Yeah.
as be feeling alone when you're at home or maybe in a more quieter
Yeah.
place. Wow.
Yeah. That's where I am. Thank
So
you.
a cacophony and connection. Wow. Isn't that a beautiful place to look for a story? So a cacophony of busy market create, I mean, you feel connected. You feel connection. Wonderful. Anybody else? Yes, yes. Pat.
Well, it's interesting because the fear of walking through dimly lit paths connects also with the photograph, which of course we know pictures
Yes.
are worth 1,000 words. And it takes me back to over the summer when I was in Chennai, and I really enjoyed walking around the city and was mostly in the central city, in the central part of the city, I think. But at one point, with one of the people that I met there, we went to see a play, which was a little bit in, I think it was still in the main part of the city, but a little further west. And then we had taken a car to get there, but we decided to try to get to the metro or the train to get home. And we found ourselves walking through an area that just felt very desolate. And of course, I did not speak the language, so he was asking people for directions. And we were at one place where it just felt like there were maybe it was a depot for buses, and there was the sound of bus engines, and it was a wide open space. It wasn't with buildings like in the photograph, but it was wide open, and there was a very brown and gray dark boulevard, and there was a median between two streets that there were no cars. Occasionally, a bus passed by. There were some people sleeping on some benches or some raised platforms. And it wasn't a sense of dread, but it certainly was a sense of like slightly heightened awareness that I don't know where we are. My friend doesn't seem to know where we are. There's no one around. There could be danger here. Um, and that's what this picture brings to me, and that fear of walking through dimly lit paths.
And was there ever a feeling that, had you ever experienced that before?
I'm sure I have. Yes, I've traveled a fair amount, and I've sometimes found myself in places where I went a little farther or a
Hmm.
little over an edge of some sort. Yes.
And how would you gauge your fear? How would you place your fear? How much was the fear here?
Oh, I don't know. On a scale of 1 to 10, if I walk through life with a level of 1, and 10 would be I think I'm about to die, that might have been about a 5.
Wow.
Not too much, but just better
Oh,
be aware. I start to walk a little more like this. Get a little swagger in my walk.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. Well, that also brings up stories of women in India. We can never ever imagine walking into dimly lit paths. We cannot do it. I mean, I would just turn and walk the other way and find people. So there's that again, when we connect to the emotion that these words uh, bring up, we can go into stories that we never imagined existed, or we never imagined that we would be talking or sharing. It can go in any direction. It could be the fears that I have as a woman, uh, and the challenges I face. So it would go from the landscape. It would go inside. So that's the power of looking at how we feel about different landscapes. That's the beauty of the 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 whole workshop is based on this Aintine that I mentioned. And to imagine that from in that Sangam period, they found this connection. They found that the landscape is connected to your emotions. It's connected to your internal world. And they created a whole genre of poetry based on this landscape and emotions. It's mind blowing. And that's the journey that we could also experience, or we could take into our storytelling. This beautiful repertoire of um, uh, uh, I mean, what is available as literature, if we could carry it into our work, and use these ideas, it's wonderful and deepens, leads to rich story development. So, yeah, so this is a way we are getting, I don't know why this is not moving. This is a way we are kind of jogging our muscles, warm ups. That's part of how we go about, because story is not automatic. You have to warm yourself up, you have to get prepared, move those muscles, move into the space, get into that mood. It's not easy. Everybody says, everybody's a storyteller. But it takes a lot of work. We have to be connected to the, we need to stay connected to the methods, the tools, and stay connected to the deeper emotions. Again and again, when we talk about storytelling, we say that it's, you know, uh, uh, bring out the emotions, bring out the emotions. That is what connects people. But how? What? What are the other ways in which we can get people to connect to their emotions? Is it just by saying, okay, this person is angry, this person is sad? It is going deeper and delving into our own emotions to feel ourselves in that space. So a storyteller has to actually feel all the feelings and then be able to express it in a way that others can connect to us. So, again, looking at landscapes, let's go back to the landscape of our birth. Where did we grow up? Where were we born? What does that feel like? How does that feel like? What was the emotions that is attached to that landscape of our birth? Imagine you're going back to that place, to where you were born. Do you want to go back there? That's the first question. How does that make you feel? Then actually imagine the place that you were growing up, the house, I mean, the house that you were growing up in. What do you remember about it? Which room do you remember the most? How does it feel if you, as an adult, were to go back to that place, whichever place, in that house of yours? What would you see? Anybody wants to share? For me, it was when I'm asked to imagine my house. Yes, I'll just finish my this thing. So I go back to the room where I used to sleep. It's the same room my grandmother used to sleep. We used to sleep together, and I used to sleep next to her with my leg over her big tummy, holding her hand. She had very, very soft hands, and this part of her hand was very mushy, mushy, mushy. So I would touch this part and go to sleep. I could not sleep without my grandmother. And every time I go back, I visit that moment in my home, in that room, sleeping with her and annoying her by asking her to tell stories. So that's we will not let her sleep, annoying her because we will not let her go to sleep. Another story, another story, another story, and then her voice would fade away because she would have dropped off to sleep. So the emotions and feeling is attached to that place. There's so many emotions that are like these threads from where stories are emerging. Ramya.
Yes. Um, Soumya, for me, as I was visualizing by your prompt, for me, in my, of course, my mother's house, there was a parijata tree. It's a very fragrant, very beautiful flower. So my biggest job in the morning was to take a basket and go fill the basket full of these parijata flowers. And I used to be so excited. I'll shake the tree, and sometimes the basket is full, but I'm so greedy, I'll climb on the parapet to get more. And I'll come back and I'll string these flowers, and it was such an exciting thing that I would look forward to do every single day in the morning. I'll be waiting, just to run there, get downstairs, shake the tree, collect the flowers, and string them. So the minute you said, it immediately took me to that, which I had kind of, grown out of. The tree is not there anymore. I don't live there anymore. Nobody lives there anymore. But that fragrance of that parijata tree, I can still feel it. Even as I speak, I can feel that strong fragrance, and I'm very connected to that flower.
Yes, I can
Thank
smell
you.
it too. I can smell it too. Because I also love the Parijata. Thanks, Ramya. And so here we have the complete, transportation to that landscape through your emotions. Thanks. Yeah, Berry. Berry, yes.
Yes, and I apologize if I'm sharing too much, but please just let me know. But where you took me is the house that I grew up in New Jersey, in the United States. It was what we call a split level, where you would come in to a small landing, and there'd be a stairway up and a stairway down. And the main living area was upstairs, and then downstairs there was a big, wide open room that was kind of a playroom or an activity room. But if you came right, there was a door underneath the stairs going up, and there was a place, and you could come under the landing, and we called it a crawl space. And my two recollections were that it felt like a big space because, of course, we were small, and that was our play area. We would go in there, and it just felt very safe, and it felt very secret, and it felt like a place just for us because the grown-ups couldn't come in. And I also reflect that it's amazing that they let us have that space, because these days I think we're in a much more materialistic culture, and many of the people, or certainly I, would need that for we have so much stuff. And it was lovely that our parents, let us have that. We could go in and set it up how we wanted, and had a lot of toys in there.
Wow, wow, wow. That reminds me that this space that you speak about in my house used to be under the table. We had a huge table, and that would be the space we would crawl it under, and we would sit there and maybe put a blanket over the table and make it into our tent and things like that. So that was our safe space. So almost like, I feel the same feeling is what we used to create there under that table in my house. Yes, Shri.
So, as I mentioned, I grew up till I was 9 years old with my grandmother and all. The house was a ancestral house. Both grandfathers, my grandfather and his elder brother, sharing half and a half, and they had this huge, with pillars outside, with wooden pillars outside. They had huge platforms, and below that, they had a huge courtyard kind of place where the women folk used to dry their starch saris and dry all kinds of pulses and pickles and papads and all that. And though you asked us to imagine only the room and the house, I somehow my imagination never stops, right? So it went outside where there were three barns of the three grandfathers, where the rice was stored, the
Mm.
barn, so that till it became old and then they could sell it. New rice is not cooked in South, so it has to become old. And we kids used to play so many games, and one of the game was like to count the eggs, and the eggs has have to be put with sand, and you cover it up. And in secret places, the opposite party has to come and search for your eggs, and they have to, wipe them off and Nela Banda means like like water or land. So if you're on a platform or a stair or something, you're on land, or you're down, you're on water. So that kind of different games. And also it took me out further where all the cows and buffaloes and the haystack and some mango trees were there, where to during the harvest season labor from Orissa used to come and stay there with and make fires with with this bricks and twigs and cook on those fires and sing in the night, and that very elementary meal of just like some fish and some tamarind water and just salt and this one and the aroma and their rusticness and their camaraderie and the songs and all that. These are all the
Wow.
memories that are evoked for me today when you took me
Wow.
back to my childhood times, Soumya.
Wow.
And I also can affirm that many a time when I try to write a story for children or sometimes for young adults or something, I invariably go back to those rice fields and that coconut trees and those images. They were on the periphery of these places. And
Yeah. Yeah.
now, as you said, both my maternal and paternal grandparents' homes are demolished, and maternal grandmother's space is still empty because my maternal uncle expired, and paternal place somebody else bought that land and constructed a three-story house on that. So these are all etched only in memories. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that brings me to the other point over here, Uh, I was raised in a city and I have no experience like you have had, Sri. So I actually feel very jealous when you're describing this. And these experiences of a land which is going to be lost, these kind of landscapes are going to be lost to our future. It's lost to me even. So the more we have to preserve these memories, these these stories, of course, but even the emotions that these landscapes evoke. It's so important to continue to maybe through the stories keep these landscapes alive, keep these landscapes alive, because the way things are changing so fast, we're going to lose so much of that natural landscape, and it's only going to be preserved in the stories we tell. So, beautiful emotions, beautiful stories that are being evoked by just connecting to landscapes. So that brings us.
Sowmya, can I
Yes, yes,
share?
please. Yes, Eric. Yes.
Yes. Well, the landscape I was raised in was not natural, really. It's smack dab in the middle of New York City, in the middle of Manhattan, in a building named 853 7th Avenue.
Uh-huh.
It's between 54 and 55 streets, and we lived on the 12th floor of a 12-story building, and I loved it. Just 4 blocks north of us was Central Park, which is this huge, huge park. Um, Before that, only the 2 blocks north of us was Carnegie Hall, where I attended many concerts. my father wrote about musicians and actors and theater. So I got free tickets to every music concert, and he took me to Broadway shows all the time because the Broadway theaters were just a few blocks south of us, like 49th Street, 50th Street, 51st. So on one side was the Broadway theaters, on one side was Central Park, and it was just a dream of culture. And you know, my parents got along well. My mother was editor of a magazine about dance, and her office was nearby too. So we lived right in the middle of this cultural scene.
Yeah. Mm. And that's why you're here.
That's why
You're
I'm here. She
in,
passed away. She passed away 30 years ago. He passed away 20 years ago. But they're very much alive in me.
yeah, yeah. And
And
you changed the
and
story
the home that
in
they
a way.
created is very much alive also. It was a wonderful home.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Ah,
There, there's so many things that when you connect to that individual rooms, then you get into so many things that come up. But I also wanted to mention here that it was a story that brought you all the way from your landscape to this landscape, and you chased the story over to India, to Chennai, and that's another story to tell. So um, yeah, so inspired by these, the external world and the way it shapes our internal world, the Sangam poetry, 2,500 years ago, Tamil literature was, I mean, it was at its height. It was at its height, if you can say that. I don't know if you can say that, but it was the Sangam period. Sangam means where they used to meet the poets, the artists. They would meet, and Madurai is the city where the third Sangam meeting was held. Artists landed up there and they would collate all the work. They would put together grammar and rules for literature and art and poetry. And from that came this idea of the five landscapes of poetry. Anbin Ein Tinai, it's called. Love's five landscape. So that also inspired me because when I was doing the ecotherapy course, we were asked to connect with our land and to find stories and folklore from our land. And till then, I had known about it, but never kind of connected with it. So I went on a journey to find out about this Aindinai and Aindinai poetry. By the way, I don't know much Tamil, so that's a big challenge. So it's been a lot of learning and understanding. But here today, I'm just being inspired by the Aindinai poetry. And I thought, why not we apply similar kind of tools to storytelling? Let's see what comes up, what kind of stories we are able to make. Because there, inspired by the Aindinai, they made poetry. So today, yes, Eric.
yes, I just want to say about the poetry you're referring to. The very fact that the poets were thinking about the five landscapes, it also tells us they were, many of them lived in cities and, sang and wrote poetry at court. So the Sangam literature is a full portrait of society in 2,000 years ago, which is very rare. In most cultures, anything that was written down 2,000 years ago was only about kings and gods. But somehow Tamil culture developed this not only a society and culture, but a way of documenting the entire society and nature in its poetry.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for that. Absolutely. And it's so inspiring that, but the emotion of love was always there. So there we go. The basic, the human need for love, that was kept. The emotion was love that they wanted to bring out in these landscapes. So the Sangam poetry mostly talks about love. There are other emotions, but mostly it's about love. We don't need to only focus on love. We can go anywhere we want, wherever our emotions take us. There are 5 pictures on your screen. So the stone, there are shells, there is a leaf, there are grains, food grains, and there is a sand. What landscape do these belong to? It's not any kind of I'm not trying to test you people, just we can throw out, what landscapes do these belong to? They're symbolic of some landscapes. Yes, Eric. Yes,
Okay,
Eric.
well, the seashells correspond to the seashore.
Yes.
And I know there's a flower for each area also, but the seashells would be the seashore. The leaf would be the mountain forest. The grains would be the agricultural land, and that stone would be the dry land before the mountains.
No, the
The
mountain.
sand.
The
Okay,
stone is the mountains.
the stone is the mountain. Well, I also think of the flowers as the mountain. Uh, and the sand then is the dry land before the mountain.
Okay, okay. So I'll add flowers to the mountain next time I do it. Yeah, so yes, so these are symbolic of the 5 landscapes that they created. The 5 landscapes they created, they believed that places were not just physical locations, but repositories of meaning and feeling. So you have mountains, and they developed a feeling for these mountains. It was of yearning and union. There were forests. They developed this feeling of waiting and faith. Farmlands was daily life and conflict. Seashore was grief and separation. What is so brilliant is that later the Jungian scientist Carl Jung, he also he also gave water the same meaning of going into your unconscious, of separation, of diving into your deeper self, grief. So it's like mind-boggling how, or maybe that's the universality of this, how universal it is. And the desert is hardship and survival. So in a this is, you can imagine 2,500 years ago. In a modern context, some of this may seem, these meanings and feeling may have changed. We may feel differently. So when I say forest, what do you feel when I say a forest of trees? You're entering a forest of trees. What do you feel? What do you think are the feelings associated with forest?
I think of a lot of sensation that is, things to smell, things to hear, things to feel, different textures, the sound of crunching underfoot, the random sounds of insects or birds or the wind or the breeze nearby or rushing water, of a creek. Just it's really a symphony of for the senses.
Beautiful. Yes, yes. So now when we are connecting to forest, it may be a little different from what it was, what is the meaning given at that time. And if you understand the way in which forests were seen in those times, maybe we will understand why they have given this kind of a meaning and feeling to it. For me, also, forest is filled with adventure. It's like place of discovery, right? But for these during the Sangam period, for them it was the theme of patience, tranquility, homecoming. And if you see, there is the idea of going into the forest after you finish your duties. It's called vanaprastha. You finish your duties, go into the forest, and you go into meditation, or you remove yourself from the daily life, and you go into a place of waiting. I mean, waiting for your release from this world. So perhaps that's why this forest has been in those days it was seen as a place of patience, tranquility, and homecoming. Mountains is the Tamil name for it. The old Tamil name for it is Kurinji, and like Eric said, it is flowering a flower, especially a Kurunji flower, which is very, very rare. It blooms only once in 12 years. It is found in the Tamil land. And this Kurunji flower is symbolic of this mountains, and it's the name of that landscape also. So Kurunji, Mullai, Marudam, Needal, and Palai are all the names of these landscapes. And each landscape is given a meaning. We can just sit with this meaning, but these are just words. You will not feel anything if you just read it. So let's just kind of feel it. Let's feel this feeling. So let's travel to mountain lands. Think of a trek you have taken. You have traveled there, probably taken a flight, reached the base camp, then you have prepared yourself, and then you've trekked, you have climbed the mountain, you've reached the top. The landscape is filled with mist and perhaps unknown pathways which have not been explored, new pathways. There is no pathway, you have to make your own pathway. This is the landscape of the mountains, or Kurinji. The landscape of the forest. The leaves, like very so beautifully, evocatively, he gave these sounds of the forest. So you have the rustling, you have the maybe the sounds of the animals, the depending on how dense the forest is, how it makes you feel, whether you feel completely engulfed, or you feel you're in the protected. What are you feeling in the forest? What have you experienced a forest? There could be a sudden gushing waterfall. There are unknown pathways that you have to make your way through. Again, similar to the mountains, but different, because the quality of that forest is very different from a mountain. The mountain pathway, the mountains followed by the forest. Then you have the farmlands. It's daily routine. There is a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of hard work. There's a lot of conflict which comes because people have to work here. They have to work the land. They have to make, grow. They have to grow they have to see that they have to nurture the land for things to grow. There is a lot of conflict here. There is also, according to the Sangam thought, there is betrayal of trust in this because of relationships. There's a lot of conflict in relationships. There's also Because there are people here who are working together, there can be a sense of you're moving from place to place. There's a sense of transplanting yourself or a community coming together in resilience. Then you come to the seaside. In the seaside, the person goes away. You have to wait for a long time. There's a lot of separation for them to come back. If somebody goes away on a ship, you're waiting for them to come back. There is grief, there is separation, there is waiting. There are memories that you have to hold on to till the person comes back. And finally, you have the harsh landscape. It does not lend to growth and you have to really adapt yourself. There is this harsh landscape where people have to adapt, find ways to live there. They have to develop skills which are different because nothing is available easily. 5 landscapes, 5 kind of ways of being. Let's explore these landscapes through stories. So tell me, which of these landscapes draws you to it? Which of these landscape draws you to it? Why did you choose that landscape? And can you share a story that connects to that landscape in your life? Which of these landscapes draws you? The mountains, the forests, the water, the seas, the dry lands, the farmlands, Sri Karuna. So Sri Karuna, if the farmlands draws your attention, what are the stories you can tell that reflects the feeling of this farmland? You even mentioned that farmlands, there was
Yes, Soumya, like earlier, I just like as a piece of stories, a place, people, and we learn we have to put in a certain descriptive way, and also I brought in the geography of the story or the setting where the story was set. I saw it in that manner, but with this explanation of the Sangam and the rhythm you're saying, yes, farmland is a unknown rhythm in the sense the crop, the cycle of the crop, you know, you sow, then it grows, and then you keep, I mean, you just sow randomly and then you keep them in rows, you know. That is called in Telugu, I know the word, I don't know in English. You plant them in rows
safe in Telugu.
and then poo they say. So you plant them in rows and then they grow and then you harvest and then the harvesting they all come together. Now maybe machinery is used, but this all is a cycle of the 4 5 months process of letting in the water at a particular time for the crop to grow. So there is such a lot of rhythm every day morning going to the field, and even this cows and buffaloes, a certain time to take them to the canal to get them washed and then feed them with water, feed them with you know I can call it like a broth of ganji and all that stuff also was fed to them. And then hay, dry hay at a particular time, and green grass at a particular time, and milking them at a particular time. There was so
Yes,
much rhythm in that. So now
Yes,
I see it
yes.
from this point of view, and I feel, uh, unknowingly, I think we can set the rhythm of the story when we are using this geography,
Beautiful,
certainly.
beautiful. Yes. So so beautifully you have shared that, because that's exactly the why am I the rhythm of the daily life, and you're bringing that rhythm into that story. Just a minute. I'm sorry. I'm making a mess of this. I'm sorry. Yeah. I wanted to show that the question is, what is the rhythm of the daily life? And then, can you see how your storytelling will also change in that way, that you probably bring in that quality into that story? Yeah. And you just got it. I mean, I'm so mind blown that you're intuitively got that rhythm of that landscape. You've got that because even in our they say, no, the farmers would sing a song and they would plant the saplings, and they would have that naturally, that's what they were doing. And the songs would be about the conflicts in their life, what is happening to them, and daily troubles and woes that was part of their, their life. So how can this lend to our storytelling? Really understands the
Beautiful.
landscape, brings up so much of rich story into our into ourselves. Then as a person who is interested in mental health, some of the questions we can ask is, when has this when has stability, so this landscape is also about stability. So when has stability been a comfort and a challenge? So, an introspective question we can ask here. Yes, Barry.
Well, this kind of relates to this in that I live in a very urban environment. I'm not around farmland very much at all, and I did not grow up, in farmland. And I've been around farmland, but I have lately realized that when I go shopping for groceries, and of course in the United States, our supermarkets are very large with wide aisles. And I find myself walking up and down the aisles, and it's the same experience I have when I go to more of a farmer's market, open market. And I think it ties in with that stability and comfort, that even though I'm only purchasing a few things, that there is a reassurance that I live. It's almost like being in a forest full of fruits and vegetables for the picking. Of course, it depends on having the resources to buy them, but even though I'm not buying much, it's I think it ties in with a very primal sense of knowing that I have resources around me, that I will likely not go hungry anytime soon, and knowing that there are a lot of people that do not have that comfort and reassurance. But I think it ties in with this farmland, this marutam, that's really my farmland. That's the place where all the fruits and vegetables and all the good things are.
Wow, beautiful, beautiful. And there we bring Marudam into our daily life. Where is our Marudam? Where do we find that Marudam in our daily life? Beautiful. Uh, I've also thought that we can think beyond love as a theme in the stories. It could be a topic around, um, like the story ideas that can come from this land. The story ideas can be not just around love, it could be the conflict, that conflict of daily life. Then it could be ways of finding innovations in a modern context. How do we solve these conflicts? So the third idea, Ravi was a young man with dreams of making it big. His father was a farmer with limited means. Now, what do you see Ravi doing to help his father or not help his father? What is the conflict here? What are Ravi's dreams? And the story can be about a young man who doesn't want to be a farmer. And I see this happening again and again when we go into villages. We're putting them in front of the laptop and computers and telling them that is a job you should have. And then the job that they have, which nobody else can know because they're born into that land. They know what to feed. They know how to grow. They know the land. But that knowledge cannot come to me. I can learn computers, but I cannot learn that. Where is that going? So, stories of this nature, this conflict can come in. And then we can even bring in a magical element, an element of a woman. I mean, here I've imagined a woman appears in his dream and says, I am a river, I'm the river goddess. So in India, these goddesses are many and they are always there giving advice and adding to the culture of a place. So what does she bring in? What is the river trying to tell us? So what are the elements of the landscape to tell us? And why the river in this landscape? Because farms and farming always happens near a river. So we have river goddess coming in and talking to this Ravi maybe and telling him, you know, you need to not just do the computer job or whatever it is, but how can you provide for us and develop a story around merging real problems with story, with imagination, with the landscape, with the needs of the landscape. Anybody else wants to share which of these landscapes draws you to them? I will share that landscape because uh, obviously I'm not very good at slideshow. So anybody else wants to do one more landscape? We can do all if you feel like.
As I'm staying close to the sea, 1.5 kilometer from the Bay of Bengal, and whenever I go into the city, we stay a little in the outskirts, and whenever I go to the city, I always love to take the, two roads lead, but I always take the seaside road. I love to look at the changing colors of the sea in response to the color of the sky and the waves and that rhythm of the waves and all is very soothing and calming. Earlier, I used to go to my morning walk and sit by the seashore and, have a wave meditation kind of time and come back. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The sea is also my muse. I do find a lot of my stories, I place them on the sea, on the seashore. Water is a big, the sea, the ocean is a big muse for me. But I never enter the sea. I don't have stories where I enter the sea. I'm always on the seashore watching the sea. So, uh, the Nathan landscape is of grief. So, mental health questions that we can ask is if your grief was the sea, what are the tides? If you feel like answering that, I would invite you to do that. Or you can take any of the story prompts. You can take the story prompts and create a story. Ria, return.
Soumya, I have a
Yeah,
doubt here.
yeah, sure.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. It's saying um, landscapes of landscape of anxious waiting and grief, but what if sea is the place where the lady is meeting her lover and it's a happy space. There is no grief in that. The lover has come back to her, who has gone to foreign lands. So.
In Sangam landscapes, the mountains are the place where the lover meets the lover's
Okay, okay.
happiness.
Okay, fine. Yeah,
Okay.
got it.
But
Yeah,
I'm going to tell you something at the end. We will go there. We'll just look at these landscapes individually and then we will go to the last
sure,
bit.
sure,
So,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
so we can have a story. Ria returned to her coastal town after 20 years, where her father had been the lighthouse keeper for decades. Again, The landscapes gives an opportunity to talk about livelihoods that people don't know about. We don't know. We don't know about a lighthouse keeper. Is that a job? So we can talk about this. Every landscape also lends to these kind of new, ideas that we can put into the story. Uh, so what's the conflict there? Ria returns after 20 years, father who's still the lighthouse keeper. And what are Ria's thoughts? What is she thinking? And then she hears of stories of the Kadal Amma, the spirit of the sea. One day, Ria was walking down the shores when she saw an old woman walking towards her. The woman her face was looking sea green and her hair was knotted. Ria couldn't believe what she was seeing. It was exactly the way her father would describe. Was this Kadal Amma, the spirit of the sea? Ria walked up to Kadal Amma and said, anybody wants to continue? Yes, well,
I'll just jump in. She went up to Kadal Amma and said,
people waiting to jump in, Barry, but I'll let
"Oh,
you.
go ahead, someone else."
No, it's joking. Please go ahead.
Well, I will say, she said, "Why have you imprisoned my father here with your violence, necessitating a lighthouse and a lighthouse keeper? And why have you taken my mother from him with the sickness that she got from the cold breezes that came off of your waves? And now he is imprisoned in his lighthouse and alone, and he will not come and visit me in the city where I have made a new life." Just like the other guy from the other story who left the farm.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. So these landscape, just sorry, I'm just yeah. So each of these landscapes have a beautiful another landscape is of hardship and survival. Now, you can use them to create stories. You can also use them to get in touch with which of these are reflected in your own life. What mirages have you chased? What oases have you found? Yeah.
Can you put mountains, Sowmya?
Yeah, sure. Mountains is right at the beginning. Okay. Kurinji. So the landscape of longing and union, according to the Sangam poetry. And the lover, they meet in secret in the mountains, much against the wishes of the parents or others. So here it is of yearning, but there is union, there is happiness in the mountains. Ramya, what do you want to say? What are you thinking? Ramya?
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't unmute for a while. No, for me, when you were asking, I mean, when you said think about landscape, somehow the mountains seems to be coming up again and again.
Okay.
When I was just thinking which story, I got reminded of the Moon Princess story, which is about Mount Fuji,
Okay.
which is actually about separation, something like that. But
Okay.
what about it? I am not able to pinpoint, but the landscape of mountains came up for me multiple times. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So go there, go find out what is drawing
Yeah.
that landscape. And there is this beautiful, I mean, the questions that you can ask yourself. What is the emotion that assumes the form of mountain in your life? Which emotion assumes the form of a mountain in your life? I would say for me, I'll have to think a little more. Give me some time. Mm, you can connect to one emotion that drives you in your life. And now, when I say this word, you know what drives me has always been driven me is actually sounds very cliched, but love. Love has driven me to. It is a mountain in my life. So I'll do anything to feel love. I will- I just love to feel love, and that's an emotion in my which assumes the form of mountain.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'll reflect.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So anybody, we have Kurunji, then Marudam we finished. Then the next one is the forests, Mullai. Like I said, the Sangam poetry talks about it as a peace with waiting, solitude, deepest secrets, keeping yourself in a space of peace, waiting, and tranquility. So for me personally, it does not connect like that, this landscape. But just going along with that idea, we can play around with this with the thought. So initially, my first slide mentioned Tinai Mayakam. So even in the Sangam poetry, they have said, though the poets would stick to one landscape, and when they say that they're writing a poem for a particular landscape, they would only stick to that, and they would see that it reflects that landscape and the meaning that they had given for these landscapes. They also coined this word called Tinai Mayakam, which means which refers to the merging of the landscape. They say that that's also allowed. You can merge your landscapes. You can feel grief in the mountains. You can feel something else in another landscape. So this is called Tinai Mayakam. And they also mention not many poets chose to do this, but there are some examples of this kind of poetry in the Sangam literature. So again, this they've thought of everything. So here we can also take that the license, the artistic license, and merge these landscapes. And then your story of the Mount Fuji, Ramya, is a Tinai Mayakam, where there's a merging of the landscapes that has happened here. You could symbolically, so if grief, so we could, I mean, you could analyze the story in a way, in through this lens. You could analyze, but maybe when we're doing the story, if the mountains you said the story of the Mount Fiji is about separation. Maybe the tears is the water that is symbolic over there. The grief is the tears, and there has been a merging of the landscapes. Okay, so we come to the applications. We can do this if we want. What what wisdom do you take from the landscape? What object do you want to carry from this landscape? What blessing do you want to place in this landscape? Now, why have I given this? Because of the application of this. Just a minute. Again, I've lost that slide. Yeah. So we could possibly use this landscape metaphor to work with different areas. Emotions and landscapes could be applied for storytelling in different contexts. I personally love the idea of using it for community building, especially when we're working with refugees. We could use this metaphor, conflict resolution, resilience work, refugee work, intergenerational communication. What she said, bringing the memories of the land that they lived, our elders lived, and uh, the experience of the youngsters. And can we look at creating stories that would merge these two? So, mental health, definitely it lends to mental health because ecotherapy believes in connecting to the world outside, which lends to better mental health. Just connecting to the world, to nature, and to the world outside, is that disconnection is leading to poor mental health. And so, can we connect to the world outside through such work, through such um, workshops or whatever. Yeah, so that's the thing. Priyanka, yes. I'm going to stop share. And yes, Priyanka.
Yeah, hi Soumya. You mentioned refugees, and I work with a lot of refugees from Bangladesh, and who actually come to this land, and then somewhere, they get. It's not the old time refugees who have already settled, but something has happened in the recent past. So over there, because there's a river. Ichamoti that passes between India and Bangladesh. So I was also inquisitive, like, for example, when we are talking about, you already mentioned farmland, right? Farmland represents conflict. But for me over here, I have walked a lot on the element of the katatar, or the the fence that comes with a lot of thorns, and that really sticks out, and if you try to cross, then you get hurt and bruised. So that is an element, but that is not related to the farmland. It's related to the land. And over there, the boats on the river, generally that is a symbol for hope, right? But for them it is a symbol of fear, because it can be, it is the uh, boat from the India side who can easily catch hold of them and put them in prison and stuff like that. So I am inquisitive. I understand this is something that comes from 2500 years back, and they have used the poetry has used the elements from that particular land.
Yeah.
But I am interested how this can be also transported and taken to other lands, and what would be the symbols, and how symbols can vary from one place to another? What are your thoughts? I'm interested in that.
So this is a template that's provided, right? I believe that we have to generate our own personal symbols for each of these landscapes. So allowing them or having them express what that particular thing means for them in that landscape is the way in which we can work with their stories. Not putting the symbol that is already available as a in this particular uh, in the as part of the Sangam period. What is that particular that object mean to them, and create a map of symbols which is uniquely theirs, which they identify with. Am I making sense? Yeah, okay, thanks. So yes, so you identify the landscape, you identify the elements of the landscape, and work on how you can bring what does it mean to them, and it's going to come through the stories that they tell about it. Like you just mentioned, the ship does not mean hope for them; it means captivity. Captivity. So each of these elements, you have to. It becomes individualized. The symbols are very, very personal. Uh, Thank you. So thanks, Priyanka, for the question. Really uh, grateful for all the work you do. And I see that these are just ideas and sparks. I know that each one of us will take it into whichever way that it builds on your creativity. So, what do you want to do now? Let's close with the when let's just close with what is coming up for you now. Yes, David.
Hi, Sowmya. Thanks for this session. I've been listening right from the beginning, and been really interested in I didn't know about the Sangam, and I felt that I was learning a lot, and I was also relating it to cultural different associations, which I suppose Priyanka was slightly touching upon, but also she was bringing it into the modern world. Because I think, in a way, there are more than two things going on, but two big things going on. Of course, are the kind of psychogeography and the cultural geography, the internal world, the mythic of what these things represent. Because also, I think in Europe, in folk tales, a lot of the time when we're talking about human habitation, we're starting stories and traditional stories in farmland, in agriculture, which of course is very different from where most people are living now in northwestern Europe and many parts of the world, which is in big cities. But of course, 2,000 years ago in the south of India, and equally, a few hundred years ago here, most people were living on the land. So often stories begin, don't they, in agricultural places, and that's the place where there's the daily life and the human conflicts and the issues. But often people step into a liminal space, which is the forest or the mountains or the ocean, where they might encounter magical beings or spirits from that world, which maybe they learn from those experiences, those encounters, they grow, they face challenges, and maybe they return, or maybe they remain in that mythic space. But I found it all very interesting. One thing I was curious about also was forest, because in the forest you described as a place of tranquility. Whereas I think in Northern European tradition, the forest is the place of the unknown, of magic again, and can be very thought of as dangerous. And certainly the further north you go into Scandinavia, in Nordic mythology, the forest is a place of wild and danger and needs to be tamed. I mean, I'm always quite shocked by the troll stories. It's very much the troll is the enemy, whereas maybe further south, we could have beautiful things in forests. The further north you go, it needs to be dominated, it needs to be controlled. And there's also, so there's the modern world clashing with civilization, clashing with wild, dangerous nature. So yeah, I'm fascinated by everything, and I think what Priyanka was saying is very important. But I think even across cultures, whether it's Bangladesh or England or any culture, people can relate on that kind of level of the human habitation world and the natural world. And what else was I going to say? And I was going to say, I love telling stories about landscapes that I really haven't experienced. More and more stories I tell are set in deserts. Maybe that's because I tell a lot of stories from Western Asia, but I can really relate to those stories. So I think there's also the personal story where we have a strong connection to the space and the land and the environment. And so when I'm telling a personal story, and you were talking about my home, and my mum is 99 this year, and she
Wow.
still lives in the house where I grew up. So when I have to imagine the difference between my life now and my life as a child, I have to think, well, it's the same house, so I can't look at it as separate, but I can think about things that were different then, like the swing in the garden when we were children, or the patio, which is now an extension, but at that time was a place of play outside. So what are the associations there? But I think that the personal story and the personal natural world for me is often very different from the mythic story space. And I don't necessarily need to be as emotionally connected to a place that I talk about in a story. Hopefully we as the listeners together have a strong emotional connection. But I think what I'm saying is I think that when I'm telling a personal story, I need to work more closely with my emotional engagement with that space. So yeah, I'm putting all of my thoughts together into a couple of minutes about your lovely session and lots of interesting learning from you and other people. Also, people who also come from India, sort of getting that sense of you've got that common heritage of language that's a bit unfamiliar to me. Very interesting.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your thoughts. I will definitely be thinking about what you said. Just one response that came to me was that the emotions of the landscape is what we are connecting to. So when you said your desert land draws you, and usually you're setting, you love to talk about the desert land. And when you look at the desert land being a place of hardship, survival, endurance, I feel somehow that's where you're connecting to it. That's where. So so the point was also exactly that when you connect to the emotion of the landscape, the story of that landscape becomes so rich when you tell it. So you are really connecting to that, to the feelings of that landscape, is what I feel. But let's just leave it there. And so much for your thoughts. Thank you, Barry and David, for your valuable thoughts and inputs. I just read what you've written, Barry, on the chat also. Thank you. Let's go back. What are we taking from each of these landscapes? Just one word, if you feel like putting it on the chat. What are we taking from this workshop? One word. And thank you to all those who participated, who you're sharing your thoughts, Sri. Thank you so much for sharing, Ramya. Eric, the mountains are calling me.
Thank you, Sowmya.
Welcome.
Eric?
Well, can I speak it instead of write it? Or we're supposed to write it?
You can
Yes.
put it on the chat. Put it on the chat.
Well, I'm just going to
Or
say.
you can speak it.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. To me, forests are in mountains. In my experience, the forests are in mountains. And to me, the forest and the mountains are all about fertility and mystery.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I know there's a lot just to mull over, and templates. I've created the English version. You will find everything in Tamil. So it is if you go and look for 5 landscapes of Sangam literature, you would find material. You can read through them.
Okay, well, Sowmya, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful workshop. I one of the good things I did in my life, 37 years ago when I first came to Tamil Nadu, I walked from the coast to the mountains. And I experienced the 5 landscapes. I didn't know all the culture at that time, but at least I experienced the nature, and I'm very glad I did. And this workshop was a wonderful exploration and introduction for some people about the tradition in Tamil culture of experiencing these landscapes with different cultural elements. So thank you so much, Sowmya. That was really wonderful.
Thank you, and have a good rest of the day.
Yep.
Bye-bye. Thank you.